Exposed, how one woman's incredible humiliation led her CEO husband to transform 50 lives forever. Emily Thompson stood before her artwork, the vibrant colors of her canvases dulled by the weight of impending judgment. The small Midwestern town buzzed with anticipation for the exhibition, but for her, the excitement had twisted into nausea. She recalled the sneering words of the gallery director echoing in her mind, mocking her work as amateurish and underwhelming. How had she let it come to this? The confidence that usually radiated from her felt shattered, replaced by an ache of humiliation that wrapped around her heart like a noose. Each brushstroke had once ignited joy and freedom. Now, standing there, she hesitated, questioning if her years of commitment to art had any meaning. The laughter-filled home she had shared with her husband, Mark, became a silent specter of what could have been a sanctuary turned tomb of dreams. How could she face the community that viewed her with newfound skepticism? Her hands trembled at the thought, once steady and capable, now betraying her deepest fears. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Panic throbbed within her as she glanced at Mark, whose brow was furrowed with concern. He had been her rock, but today, he looked lost, and she felt an irritable fire kindling beneath her skin. Was she dragging him down? Her mind raced. What if she had taken a different path? The notion of embarrassment ignited self-doubt. She felt exposed and raw, each breath a reminder of how her artistry had become a public spectacle of failure. In this tight-knit world, where reputation reigned, the gallery director's scorn seeped into her reality like poison. Mark, the formidable CEO, was shouldering his own burdens. Conflicted and powerless, he remembered his father's words about uplifting family. Emily's spirit wilted beneath societal judgment, a flower crumbling in the frost. Determination sparked within him. He would channel his resources, create a program to elevate marginalized artists, not just for Emily, but for all those stifled by disdain. Yet, the looming shadows of opposition from the board members, anchored by profit over people, loomed large. Tension knitted itself into their lives like a stubborn thread, tightening. As days passed, Emily's agony morphed into a fledgling resilience. She embraced a mentoring role, channeling her heartbreak into empowering young artists, finding purpose blooming in adversity. The transformation of her quiet home began to ripple outward. She spoke again, laughter returning, little by little. But just as hope seemed tangible, the gallery director returned, a menacing presence beneath the surface of their hard-earned momentum. Fear festering, Emily confronted Mark. The looming possibility of another public humiliation felt like a thundercloud on the horizon. As the program's first showcase approached, anxiety clutched Emily's chest, suffocating the progress they had painstakingly achieved. 50 young artists stood ready to unveil their hearts, each canvas a testament of resilience against self-doubt. Could she defy her past weakness? Could they withstand the storm of judgment about to descend upon them? The gallery director's eyes, cold and calculating, promised nothing short of immediate destruction. Emily inhaled deeply, heart racing. Would her resolve hold against the dread of potential ridicule? In the electric silence of the moment, everything hung in the balance. What would it take to reclaim her space, her identity? The chaos beckoned, daring her to confront the crushing weight of expectations. The rift had grown, but it was time to illuminate the shadows. This was her moment. Would she find her voice, or would silence swallow her whole once more? The day of the showcase arrived, cloaked in a thick veil of uncertainty. Emily stood in front of the gallery, the imposing structure looming over her like a giant reflecting her innermost fears. A knot twisted in her stomach, a twisted blend of excitement and dread. The young artists had poured their souls onto their canvases, yet she felt as though her own spirit remained trapped, shackled by insecurities that thrived in the shadow of judgment. As guests began to trickle in, their chatter filled the air, yet each voice felt like an echo of the director's scorn. Who were these people to appreciate art anyway? Would they simply reinforce her past failures? Emily's heart pounded, matching the frenetic rhythm of her overactive mind. Did she even belong here, a mere remnant of the artist she used to be? Mark stood beside her, a sentinel against the storm of doubt surrounding her. He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently, imbuing her with a sliver of his unwavering belief. "You're not just here for yourself," he whispered, barely above a murmur, but it cut through her anxiety like a knife. "You're here to show them what true resilience looks like. Even if it's difficult, you own your narrative." As the first few paintings were unveiled, she felt a flicker of confidence igniting. Each piece, vibrant and evocative, narrated a story hushed in their struggles to rise against adversity. They represented a spectrum of human experience, a collage of identities brushing against societal expectations. She realized that the most authentic art erupted from vulnerability, and she began warming to the potential that resonated in the tropical hues before her, but as the gallery director glided through the space, a palpable chill wrapped around the room. His sharp eyes scrutinized each piece, searching for weaknesses to amplify. He smirked at a young painter's anxious smile, dismissing it with a haughty glance. Emily collected herself, rattled by the return of an old adversary. Was he really plotting the impending demise of her moment? "Just focus on the art," Mark insisted, drawing Emily's attention back from the shadows. She forced a smile. These artists were depending on her not only as a mentor but also as a living testament to overcoming rejection. In a moment of impulsivity, she stepped closer to the gathered audience. "If I may, I'd like to share something." Her voice trembled, but she powered through. Art is not just about perfection or approval. It's about the courage to reveal oneself, to be vulnerable and alive. Every brushstroke we make is a piece of who we are. The room stilled, and for the first time, she felt their focus shift back to her words rather than the judgmental gaze of the gallery director. As she continued to speak, she noticed smiles breaking across the faces around her, and encouragement pulling her out from the depths of her doubt. Art wasn't mere exhibition, it was a means to connect. But before she could transition into a tale about her experiences, the pitfalls and hidden triumphs, the gallery director interrupted, his voice slicing through the atmosphere like a winter chill. "Emily, how quaint. But this festival is about showcasing talent, not delivering emotional speeches." His words threatened to sweep her resolve away like autumn leaves caught in a storm. Emily felt the pressures mounting as murmurs ignited among the audience. An internal tempest tore through her resolve, yet something deeper stirred within her. This wasn't merely about her anymore, it was about every artist feeling the weight of doubt. "Perhaps you're right," she deflected, channeling her turbulent emotions into a steely calm. "But maybe it's also about challenging ourselves. Isn't that what we seek? To feel seen, valued, and understood?" She held his challenging stare, driven by a fierceness she didn't know existed within her. The gallery director faltered, momentarily taken aback. Could he really dismiss her newfound conviction? But before she could gauge the shift in atmosphere, a young artist stepped up beside her, ready to voice their own insecurities and embrace the moment. In that instant, she realized her journey wasn't merely for her alone. It was time to ignite the passions of others, to breathe life into their aspirations, even amidst intimidation and threat. With the audience now rallied, Emily set her gaze back on Mark, who wore an expression of pride tinged with relief. But concern still flickered in his eyes. How would this confrontation resolve? They had taken a step forward, but would they be met with acceptance or scorn? With a vehement thrust of her courage, she prepared to face whatever the gallery director would unleash next. It was no longer just about her exposure, now they stood together. And the real battle for acknowledgement was just beginning. The tension in the air crackled like static, palpable and alive. Emily stood her ground, breathing steadily as she squared her shoulders against the gallery director, his disapproving glare unfaltering. This was no longer about her, it was a collective moment steeped in vulnerability and defiance, and she could feel every gaze in the room anchoring her in that truth. Art isn't just talent, it's an act of bravery, she asserted, her voice strengthening with each syllable. Artists face their fears and vulnerabilities every day, we bare our souls on these canvases. That's what makes art relevant. Mark's small nod of encouragement spurred her determination. She was not merely a spectator anymore, she was part of something vibrant. The rest of the audience, drawn by her authenticity, seemed to consent with silent affirmations. Uncertainty, however, still loomed. Would it be enough? Drawing on the sentiment swirling in the room, she continued, we can't let criticism intimidate us. Every time we step back from fear, we deny our journey. The quiet murmur of agreement rippled through the audience, a balm against the frigid air created by the gallery director. Yet, he wasn't one to let the tide change without a fight. But isn't this just an excuse for mediocrity? His voice dripped with sarcasm, and he stepped closer, swirling the audience's attention back to him. People want to admire skill, not stories. There it was, the familiar sting of dismissal, echoing the very fears she had fought to suppress. As his words hung between them, Emily instinctively grasped the edges of her dress. She barely remembered the last time someone had talked down to her without stoking a fire deep within. This time, something shifted. Instead of retreating, she pressed forward, fueled by the momentum of the vulnerable stories shared in that space. Skill is developed, but stories are lived, Emily shot back, the strength of her conviction shocking even herself. If we don't infuse our work with our experiences, then we are merely producing empty paintings, devoid of life. Surely, art deserves more than that. The gallery director faltered, perhaps for the first time unsure how to oppose her burgeoning confidence. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a reckoning. She glimpsed a flicker of wariness in his eyes as if the pedestal he so carefully maintained was shifting beneath him. Looking out over the audience again, Emily saw faces bright with interest. Tiny threads of connection blossomed between them, genuine shared energy coursing through the space. In the past, she would have clung to self-doubt, allowing his words to undermine her resolve. Today, however, was different. She was no longer that uncertain artist but a mentor willing to risk exposure for the sake of empowerment. Let us create art that challenges us to grow, that tells our stories and ignites conversations, she urged, her voice steady despite the urgency clawing at her insides. Failure is not the end, and our voices matter. With every word, she painted a picture that resonated. The audience leaned in, intent on absorbing what she had to share. Just when she thought momentum was firmly on her side, the gallery director regained his composure, redirecting the room with newfound sharpness. It's clever how you've spun your narrative, Emily, but what about the objective criteria? The audience will measure us against standard notions of genius, something you were once excluded from. His words sliced into her, but instead of shrinking away, she embraced the challenge. Perhaps genius is not a measure of talent alone, but of the relentless pursuit of connection and meaning. What is more important, hanging in a prestigious gallery or fostering a community of artists who feel understood? As realization settled over the onlookers, a ripple of murmur transformed into bubbling enthusiasm, sparking a dialogue she had yearned to ignite for so long. The director's face soured, unable to refute the truth and undeniable force that united them all, but as the energy shifted and the warmth spread throughout the gallery like sunlight breaking through clouds, a slight shift caught Emily's attention. In the back of her mind, alarms rang in sync with her escalating heartbeat as she realized the stakes were higher than she had anticipated. This was not just about her or the gallery director, it was about redefining the meaning of success. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from Mark, urging her to look behind her. Hesitantly, she turned. In the distance, an influential art critic had entered the gallery, eyes keenly drawn to the animated scene unfolding. What would this unexpected presence mean for her fight? The moment for transformation hung in the air, enveloping her in uncertainty and possibility. As she steadied her resolve, she grasped the fragility of the opportunity before her. It was time to bring forward the truth she had unearthed, but could she keep this momentum, or would the past overshadow the promise of her renewed vision? Emily felt the unmistakable tension spike as the art critic approached, the weight of expectation settling with each measured step. This was a chance, albeit a daunting one, and she could feel her heart race. Her throat tightened, all of a sudden self-doubt nipping at her resolve. Yet, the very air around her seethed with the energy of those who had absorbed her words. She had to leverage that. Taking a breath, she stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "You see," she began, directing her comments toward the critic and pivoting the audience's focus. "Art isn't just a product of skill, it's a dialogue between creators and observers. It's the lived experience that demands to be recognized." The critic, a tall figure wrapped in an air of authority, folded his arms, intrigued but guarded. Emily sensed the challenge beneath his gaze, but she refused to back down. This was her moment to build her confidence and prove that vulnerability could captivate just as much as technique. In creating art, we hold up mirrors to society. The stories woven into each piece are what linger long after a painting has left the gallery. She pushed on, emboldened by the murmurs of support from those around her. "Interesting," the critic replied, the skepticism in his stance thawing slightly. "You speak of vulnerability, but isn't there a danger in exposing one's self too much? A line to be drawn?" His question hung in the air, inviting a deeper examination. Emily considered this. Her past had taught her the weight of exposure, the sharp edge of shame. Yet, she realized, that very exposure had also been the crucible of her growth. "Yes, there's a risk," she acknowledged, her voice steady. "But without that risk, we risk stagnation. Each brushstroke of bravado in the face of fear is a step towards something greater." As she observed the critic's brow furrow, a wave of clarity washed over her. The real narrative lay not just in the art itself but in the journey and connection it sparked. She could feel the encouragement radiating from Mark and the rest of the audience. They were all rooting for her to step into this moment fully. "What are you offering this community?" she challenged the critic, shifting her focus. "If the measure of success is only introspective craftsmanship, then we leave behind the very purpose of art itself. Art isn't merely aesthetic, it's an experience, a bridge to understanding and empathy. You think you can change minds and hearts?" He shot back, skepticism lacing his tone. Emily paused, feeling the ground beneath her shift. "I know I can. We all carry stories that define us, stories that yearn for expression. Isn't that worth exploring? The connection we foster could breathe fresh air into a seemingly stagnant industry. Isn't that worth risking the status quo?" For a moment, silence filled the gallery, the tension thick enough to cut through. The critic seemed to contemplate her words as she wrestled with growing uncertainty. Could her narrative convince him? Or would he return to his previous biases? As murmurs of agreement began to ripple through the crowd again, Emily leaned into the moment. "We should not merely strive for the gallery walls, but for the stories that resonate with the human experience. This is a journey for all of us artists and spectators alike." Suddenly, she noticed the critic's demeanor shift, a hint of contemplation flashing in his eyes. "Perhaps," he began slowly, "I could be persuaded to see things differently." Hope bloomed within her, yet the fear of failure loomed close, reminding her that change was never easy. But suddenly, the gallery director interjected, his voice hardening with authority. "This isn't a panel for abstract debates, Emily. There are standards to uphold. You risk trivializing the essence of expertise." Emily felt crushed, like a bridge she had just built was collapsing beneath her feet. In this moment of confrontation, she realized the gravity of her undertaking. The stakes were higher than she had imagined. Would she be able to convince the critic while defending her position against the director's ire? The tension coiled around her anxiously, and her heart raced. She had opened a door to a new narrative about what art could accomplish, but was she prepared to face the reality of what it might cost her? Determined, she squared her shoulders. There would be no retreat. She had to fight for the transformation she believed in, for herself and for every artist who longed to be seen for more than mere technique, but could she truly navigate this intricate terrain without losing sight of her mission? Emily's heart sank as the director's words hung in the air, heavy with authority. The taste of defeat was acrid in her mouth, yet beneath that bitterness loomed the desperate fire of defiance. She glanced toward Mark, hoping to draw strength from his supportive gaze, but the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes made her resolve even more urgent. This was not merely about defending her art, it was about the very essence of creativity and expression that was so easily dismissed. Taking a moment, she glanced around the gallery, eyes meeting those of fellow artists and patrons who had witnessed her struggle. They were not just passive bystanders, they were also witnesses to the unfolding truth of her artistic philosophy. Art could inspire, provoke, and liberate if only they dared to embrace its risk, including her. "Mr. Director," she began, her voice gaining strength, "I don't aim to trivialize expertise. Instead, I believe we should elevate the discourse to include the emotional complexities intertwined with artistic creation. Isn't that what art is intended to evoke?" The director shifted his stance, appearing unfazed but slightly intrigued. "Art should challenge norms," he stated, the challenge in his tone not escaping her attention. "But it must also meet certain criteria to be considered significant." "Criteria," Emily echoed, weighing the word as if it were an artifact frozen in time. "But who sets those criteria, those standards? Are they not subjective, molded by personal biases rather than an objective measure of artistry?" The critic nodded, sensing the shift in momentum. Confidently, she pressed further. "What if we redefine significance? What if shared experiences became the new measure of impact? Isn't it the stories we tell that ultimately shape the art we create?" She noticed the audience leaning in, absorbed by her conviction. Perhaps there was a flicker of hope after all, a moment where vulnerability met resilience. "Your thesis is compelling, Emily," the critic interjected smoothly, surveying the room. "However, the challenge, an uphill one at that, remains intact. To shift the narrative, you must first build credibility. Are you prepared for that battle?" The weight of his words settled over her, and for a brief moment, doubt crept back in, cold and unwelcome. She felt the abrupt chill of fear whisper through her thoughts, painting vivid images of failure, of missed opportunities and rejection. However, she remembered the faces of artists like her, those who had poured their souls into their works without assurance of recognition. She recalled her own struggles, the nights spent wrestling with self-doubt, and always, the desire to forge a deeper connection through her art. "Prepared," she finally replied, steeling her resolve, "is simply one way of putting it. It's not about preparation, it's about commitment. And that requires courage. I am ready to confront not only the elitist norms of our industry but the personal biases that taint our perceptions of what art embodies and who should hold the brush." There was a spark of energy that ignited in the room, as if her words held the power to alter the landscape they were all accustomed to. But the director shook his head, eyes narrowing. "Passion is commendable, but does it translate into a tangible change? Will you become just another voice lost in the cacophony of artists claiming the same?" The question stung. Emily felt the complexity of her feelings twist inside her. She had invested so much into her mission. She had to prove not only to him but to herself that she could rise above the noise. "What do you suggest then?" she asked, tracing the edges of her anger. "Should I conform to what is expected, to silence my voice for the sake of acceptance? Or should I take the risk? If art can be changed, then I will fight for it. I refuse to settle for mediocrity." Above the chorus of murmurs and shifting thoughts, a subtle silence enveloped the gallery. The air grew taut, brimming with tension, a communal breath held in anticipation. Was she witnessing the turning of tides? Could her persistence finally break through the protective barriers established around artistic norms? The critic remained inscrutable. Emily locked eyes with him, conveying not merely her determination, but her unwavering belief in the possibility of transformation. Yet in that moment, she was struck by a realization: the stakes of her fight had become greater than she initially perceived. If she succeeded in this struggle, it would not only reshape her artistic journey but lay a foundation for others who struggled to be heard, but would she be strong enough to withstand the relentless tide of opposition, or would she find herself drowned in the weight of expectation? As the silence lingered, a whisper echoed within her, igniting a question that propelled her forward. How far was she willing to go to claim her place and the place of others within the world of art? The game was on, she was ready to face the repercussions of her deeper calling. But the most frightening confrontation lay ahead, one that would force her to reckon with her own identity and essence. Was she ultimately prepared for that unveiling? Emily left the gallery feeling a tumult of emotions charged through her like electric currents. The director's skepticism loomed over her like a shadow, but beneath it glimmered determination. As she walked, her mind raced with possibilities and strategies, carving a distinct path through uncertainty. What would her next step be? Would she change her art to align with traditional measures, or would she stay true to her vision, knowing it may alienate influential figures? She rounded the busy street corner, the noise of the city awakening her senses, but the pulse of her thoughts remained relentless. This was not merely a battle for artistic acknowledgement, it was a confrontation of her very identity. In the quiet of her studio, Emily confronted a mirror, her reflection a canvas of raw vulnerability and courage. She recalled the words of the director, punctuated by his raised brow and dismissive stance. Are you prepared for that battle? Asking herself the same question, she realized the answer extended far beyond just her art. It referenced every darkened corner of self-doubt she had navigated. Thus as she began to paint, the colors she chose were bright and defiant, a stark contrast to the hues she usually preferred. Each stroke was imbued with a deeper purpose. Her emotions transformed from confusion into clarity, guiding her to realize that to break the mold she needed to redefine not only her output but her process. The idea crystallized in her mind: she would create a new series focusing on personal narratives shared among artists like her. She envisioned a collection embraced by emotional honesty, a testament to resilience and expression that transcended superficial standards. Taking a pause, she felt excitement surge through her, reminding her of the passion that originally pulled her into the world of art. However, the challenge remained formidable. To gain credibility, she would need to showcase her work in ways that drew attention beyond her immediate circles. She pondered ways to approach her peers, those who might see the merit in her message and join her in defying traditional expectations. Emily reached for her phone, flipping through her contacts hesitantly. She had always been more comfortable behind the canvas, letting her art speak for her. But a transformative moment had ignited a sense of urgency within her. She needed allies, individuals who could amplify her vision, lend their voices, or even collaborate in a way that could enshrine her radical ideas around art. She scrolled to the name of a curator she had followed online, someone known for promoting avant-garde artists eager to challenge the status quo. With a deep breath, Emily began to type, weaving words that laid bare her aspirations and inviting collaboration. With each key pressed, her fears began to recede, replaced by a budding confidence reminiscent of her first bold strokes on a blank canvas. But the truth loomed larger than her budding plans. Did she have the capacity to face both success and criticism head-on? Would her vision resonate as authentically as she hoped? The looming uncertainty whispered around her, reminding her of past failures that threatened to tangle with her newfound resolve. As she hit send, the weight of her decision collided with anticipation. The wait seemed agonizingly endless, but she knew the response could shape her next steps profoundly. Emily had embarked on this journey to reclaim her voice, but now she realized the stakes were not solely for herself. They were for a community of artists yearning for authenticity. Moments later, a notification flashed. Her inbox had a response. Heart racing, Emily opened it. Your vision intrigues me. Let us discuss further. A wave of relief and exhilaration washed over her, yet alongside it surfaced trepidation. Had she truly laid the groundwork for a movement? With art as her platform and allies at her side, she faced the question that reverberated in her mind. What would it take to rise not just as an artist, but as a leader in redefining artistic value? Creating a new kind of art might just require more than innovation, it would demand integrity amidst scrutiny. The confrontation she dreaded loomed ever closer. Was she prepared to stand tall, shoulder the burden of expectations she had once resisted, and transform her vision into a reality, with her heart pounding in resonance with the streets outside, Emily stood on the precipice of her own evolution, ready to dive deeper into her mission. But the coming weeks would be rife with challenges that could fracture her growing resolve. She was determined to transform her fears into catalysts, but would they propel her into greatness or leave her vulnerable to the inevitable emergence of opposition? The journey ahead called out to her, enigmatic and fraught with potential. Would she embrace it? Emily awoke the next morning with a sense of purpose unfurling within her. The sunlight streamed through her studio window, illuminating the remnants of last night's creation, a canvas alive with her vibrant hues, demanding to be seen. But even as she admired her work, doubt crept in with the shadows of the morning. What if the energy she poured into her art wasn't enough? Today, she had a meeting with the curator to discuss her series. He had read her email, captivated by her ambition, but she could sense skepticism hovering just beneath the surface. How could she convey her vision without faltering? She paced her studio, questioning her instincts, each footfall echoing the weight of expectation. While preparing her materials, Emily began rehearsing her pitch, reflecting the truths of her narratives, the raw struggles and victories that echoed her own artistic journey. She needed to articulate why her vision mattered, not just to her, but to the community of artists who felt invisible in the mainstream art world. As she spoke the words out loud, the tremor of her voice revealed her still simmering apprehension. What if she stumbled while trying to frame her artistic philosophy? What if he dismissed her vision outright, much like the gallery director? With every concern spiraling in her mind, she decided to shift her focus to the present moment. She could control her passion, the authenticity in her work, but how would she convey it? Nervously, she arranged her portfolio, selecting pieces that spoke to her themes of vulnerability and resilience. Each artwork demonstrated her journey, brushstroke after brushstroke, depicting not just solitary triumphs but shared narratives that formed a tapestry of artistic kinship. She gathered her resolve and repeated her mantra, "I am not just an artist. I am a catalyst for change." The meeting arrived with an electric buzz in the air. As she approached the gallery, she caught sight of her reflection in the polished glass door, feeling like an intruder rather than a creator. Still, she pushed through the door, the bell chiming like an echo of her resolve. The moment they shook hands, she felt the coolness grip her, reminding her that she needed to be composed. The curator's office was filled with art, each corner a testament to bold expression. It was both inspiring and intimidating. As they sat across from each other, she launched into her vision, detailing her intent to create pieces that encapsulated personal narratives, the strength found in vulnerability. Eyes locked, she found his curiosity piquing as she shared her experience as an artist grappling with the expectations placed upon her by society. She expected resistance or skepticism, but instead, she saw a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. He asked probing questions that illuminated gaps in her explanation, yet instead of feeling cornered, she felt revitalized. Each inquiry pushed her to dig deeper, to refine her arguments and articulate more clearly why her vision transcended her art and entered a realm of collective identity. As the conversation progressed, her confidence swelled, preparing to share her most audacious piece, her piece de resistance, a stunning portrayal of an artist confronting personal demons through creativity. "What do you feel when you look at it?" she asked, already sensing the connection forming between them. "I see struggle, yes, but also incredible strength," he replied, leaning forward, intrigued. "You want to redefine what art can mean, don't you? Especially for artists who feel left out of traditional channels." "Yes," she exclaimed, feeling the alignment of their visions. "This is more than just art. It's about forging connections, embracing authenticity, and dismantling barriers." Yet behind the satisfaction of their shared vision lurked the reality of her journey, a collective of artists longing for validation. While she had begun to carve her path, would her newfound collaboration bring about meaningful change? As she left the meeting invigorated but aware of the imminent expectations building upon her shoulders, a question reverberated in her mind: was she truly ready to lead this transformative movement in the art world? The city buzzed around her as she exited the gallery, but the heart of her matters lingered in the air. What would she sacrifice as she ventured down this path of bold authenticity? The answer awaited her just off the horizon, cloaked in both promise and peril. The time was coming to confront not just external challenges, but the shadows of her own insecurities. Prepare, she thought, to face the battleground of expectations, both self-imposed and wielded by others. The art world was vast, and she had dared to take her stand. But would she summon the will to sustain her fight and truly embrace the transformation that awaited? The tension bubbled beneath her resolve, leading her onward, ready for the next pivotal moment in her journey. The following week found Emily submerged in a whirlwind of preparation. The meeting with the curator had sparked something within her, a fire that both exhilarated and terrified. Each day became a dance with her ambitions and anxieties, her art studio transforming into an altar of creativity and conflict. The notion of stepping into her role as a leader resonated deeply, but it also confronted the fragile boundaries of her self-belief. She felt it most clearly in the way she painted. Each brushstroke had transformed, where once she navigated through colored landscapes of personal introspection, now they seemed to pulsate with urgency. The canvas whispered expectations back to her, demanding clarity as she deftly articulated the shared connections within her work. However, the weight of the unfulfilled promise loomed larger than ever. Emily began to realize that the curatorial meeting had unveiled not just her artistic potential, but her responsibilities toward those who might see themselves in her art. She resisted the impulse to label the position thrust upon her as a burden. Instead, she framed it as an opportunity, a chance to cultivate dialogue and meaningful connections in a world saturated with superficial exchange. But how could she ensure that her voice would resonate authentically, not just echo the sentiments already prevalent in the art community? As she mulled over these reflections, she reached for her phone. After moments of hesitation, she drafted a message to other local artists, inviting them to her studio for a discussion. She envisioned a gathering, an informal, open dialogue about their experiences, fears, and aspirations. It felt audacious yet necessary. Hadn't she asserted that authenticity was at the core of every artist's journey? Her fingers hovered above the screen for a heartbeat longer before she pressed send. What if they rejected her? What if no one showed up? Those questions slithered through her thoughts, yet as she sat back, she felt a flicker of excitement sparking within her. Maybe this was the very change she yearned to inspire. The response from her fellow artists was immediate and enthusiastic. Conversations about the impending gathering buzzed through social media. Though excitement flourished, Emily noticed a wave of self-doubt wash over her. The more she thought about leading this meeting, the more the notion expanded into something daunting. What if she faltered under the weight of her own ambition? Days later, as she prepared her studio for the gathering, the space took on an air of opportunity. She organized easels and set up seating, her movements nimble yet deliberate, each action a grounding ritual. But then, amid the flurry of activity, her thoughts shifted to Shackleton, the artist who had displayed fierce passion and relentless pursuit while facing myriad setbacks. He was a reminder of resilience in the face of adversity. She would channel that same spirit. As the clock inched toward the time of the meeting, she felt her heart rate elevate, pumping energy into her body. What she feared was more than vulnerability, it was the very prospect of being seen not just as an artist, but as a beacon for others like her. Just before the first artist arrived, she caught her reflection in the mirror and held her gaze. "See me. Trust this," she whispered to herself. When the door swung open, her guests were met with an inviting atmosphere, the air thick with anticipation and unvoiced questions. As they settled in, the room buzzed with energy, artistic kinship fused with a sense of vulnerability. Emily hesitated at first, battling her instincts, but then she embraced the charge of shared uncertainty. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice steadier than she had anticipated. "I want to create a space where we can collectively explore our journeys and struggles as artists. Our narratives are powerful, and I hope we can find strength in each other." As stories started flowing, Emily discovered layers of vulnerability in her peers' experiences, stories that amplified her own. It was transformative. The more they opened up, the more she realized the need for a consistent space where this dialogue could thrive. Yet, as the evening unfolded, an unexpected tension emerged when one artist voiced a critical perspective and eager dissent challenging Emily's vision. The simplicity of their critique sent ripples through the group. While she listened, the weight of their question reverberated inside her. How could she remain authentic in the face of criticism while steadfastly championing her artistic journey? Her heart raced with conflicting thoughts as the realization set in. This was the moment she had both craved and feared. Drawing a deep breath, she prepared to respond, her mind racing. The question was no longer about answering the critique, it was about asserting her capability to lead amidst uncertainty. Did she have the power to navigate these complex dynamics without losing herself in the process? With renewed determination, she knew it was time to confront not just her creations, but the very core of vulnerability that artists share, a battleground of ideas where every stroke of dialogue mattered. Would she falter under pressure, or could she transform this challenge into a defining moment not only for herself but for her peers? The crossroads loomed before her, and the atmosphere thickened with every passing second. The stakes had risen. She was ready to share her truth, but it felt intertwined with a greater challenge: what would emerge from confronting her critics, both externally and internally? Emily stood at the precipice of a growing storm, her heart pounding in her chest as she absorbed the weight of the critique. This dialogue had started as a beacon of collective artistic exploration, yet now hung precariously on the brink of conflict. She felt the palpable tension woven into the fabric of the room, the very air thick with expectation. How could she assert her vision while simultaneously respecting the perspectives shared by her peers? Casting her gaze around the room, she took in the faces before her fellow artists, each reflecting a mosaic of ambition, doubt, and dreams yet to be realized. They were looking to her, not just for guidance but for authenticity. This wasn't merely about defending her work, it was about modeling the very vulnerability she had championed. "Thank you for your honesty," she replied, her voice steady and clear. "Your perspective challenges me, and this is exactly the kind of dialogue I wanted to foster. But let us explore this together. What aspects of my vision don't resonate with you?" The room paused, the atmosphere crackling with energy. Emily felt a rush of exhilaration course through her. In that moment, she was reminded that art was not merely about individual expression but also about collective interpretation. Instead of retreating into defensiveness, she chose collaboration as her anchor. Art transcends the personal, doesn't it? Each brushstroke tells different stories, creates different dialogues. Please share your thoughts. What alternatives do you envision? She urged, inviting this artist, and the others, to dive deeper into the conversation. This small act of vulnerability, a willingness to engage with criticism rather than deflect it, began to shift the dynamics in the room. Other artists began to chime in, inspired by her lead. Like a ripple effect, a torrent of ideas surged forth, each voice contributing to a chorus of perspectives and insights. As the discussion unfolded, Emily felt a transformation within herself. She realized she was learning not only from their critiques but also from their diverse viewpoints, deepening her artistic vision in unforeseen ways. The challenge felt less like an obstacle and more like a refining fire. Suddenly, she wasn't just an artist defending her work, she was a vessel for collective creativity, a role she had never anticipated but found herself relishing. Maybe this isn't just about defending a singular vision, she pondered internally. Maybe it's about evolving, growing closer to the essence of what art means to each of us. With that revelation came clarity, a turning point where her fear began to dissolve into determination. She no longer felt hopelessly fragile, instead, she recognized her resilience. Each twist in the discourse became a brushstroke on the canvas of her leadership journey. As the meeting reached its zenith, Emily found herself confronting her past fears head-on. She recalled the self-doubt that had once defined her, the compulsion to seek validation externally rather than embracing her authentic voice. In that realization lay profound strength and awakening that catalyzed her growth, anchoring her in the present. The meeting concluded with an invigorating sense of unity. Each artist left with not only new ideas but an enriched trust in one another. Emily felt elation swell within her, but it was quickly replaced by an ever-familiar shadow and echo of unresolved doubts whispering, was this moment enough? Did she truly embrace the challenge of leadership, Or was it simply a dazzling facade? In the days that followed, Emily found herself tenuously balancing the exhilaration of progress and the nagging disquiet of self-reflection. Amidst her artistic pursuits and engagement with fellow creatives, one question loomed large: had she genuinely transformed, or was she merely applying a temporary balm over deeper insecurities? With every passing day, she felt the urgency to confront this truth. She needed to dive deeper into the significance of her emerging role. What would it take to not just cultivate an authentic artistic community, but to do so as a leader steeped in her unwavering self-belief? The answer beckoned just beyond reach, waiting for her to confront it fully. Emily leaned in closer to the possibility of revelation. The journey ahead promised not only discovery but also the depths of transformation she had yearned for. But before she could take the next step, an unexpected phone call shattered her contemplative space. "Emily, there's someone I think you should meet," her friend said on the line. "You need to hear this." Curiosity and trepidation knotted in her stomach. Who could this person be? How might they challenge or support her journey? Emily's heart raced as she hung up the phone, the weight of the unexpected invitation heavy on her shoulders. She had finally started to carve a path not just for herself but for a community of artists, and now a new prospect threatened to shift her focus yet again. This was the moment her intuition had been waiting for a chance to evolve further, to confront her insecurities head-on, or perhaps, to finally embrace the kind of transformation she had always imagined. With a mix of apprehension and exhilaration, she set a date to meet this stranger, an art activist known for her dynamic approaches to community building and artistic expression. As the days crawled by, Emily took the time to reflect on her journey, her meetings, and the growing confidence that seemed, at times, so fragile. She had committed to fostering an environment of vulnerability and authenticity among her peers, but what about her own narrative? The day of the meeting arrived. The cafe bustled with energy, a bright, inviting space filled with the vibrant chatter of artists. As Emily caught her first glimpse of the woman across the room, she recognized her presence instantly. There was an intensity about her, an aura of someone who had fiercely navigated their own struggles. "Emily," the woman inquired, her voice warm, yet commanding. "It's so great to finally meet you. I've heard so much about your work." As they exchanged pleasantries, Emily found herself drawn into a captivating discussion about art as a powerful means of connection. The activist spoke of her experiences, the countless barriers she had faced and shattered, and how the communality of shared artistic narratives could spark real change. Emily felt a familiar glimmer of inspiration swell within her, yet a nagging voice in her mind began to echo the questions she had been grappling with. How could she truly remain authentic amid her newfound visibility? "So, what's the dream?" the activist asked, a twinkle of mischief and curiosity in her eyes. "I want to create art beyond traditional metrics, to capture the stories of artists who often feel unseen," Emily replied, her voice brimming with passion. "But I also fear I may not have the experience or authoritative voice to lead that change." The activist leaned in closer. "That's where you're wrong, Emily. Authenticity doesn't stem from titles or accolades. It emerges from your willingness to be honest, to engage with your story, and to invite others in." With each word, Emily felt the foundation she had been building deepen. This conversation was not just about her path, it was about embracing the complexities of fear and courage in their intertwined dance. As the afternoon unfolded, Emily shared her evolving vision and ambitions, feeling the barriers of self-doubt begin to dissolve. "Your story is your power," the woman added, her conviction palpable. "It's precisely your journey, complete with struggles, doubts, and triumphs, that resonates with others. The art you create from that space will not only be impactful but also transformative." In that moment, clarity washed over Emily. This wasn't just about innovative creations or changing perceptions. It was about cultivating connections, the nexus of shared vulnerability and resilience within the artistic community. She had not only pursued this endeavor for herself but had now assimilated a greater purpose. The meeting began to draw to a close, and naturally, Emily felt the urge to consider what lay ahead. She saw herself rising from the audience of artists she had once been to a position of leadership, a role of responsibility that demanded strength, integrity, and relentless authenticity. Suddenly illuminated by her own convictions, she asked, "Would you be interested in collaborating on this vision?" A remarkable smile spread across the activist's face. Absolutely. Championing voices through art is a mission worth pursuing together. As they made arrangements to work jointly on upcoming projects, the warmth of possibility enveloped Emily, solidifying her sense of agency. Finally, she was ready to embrace her leadership role, grounded in both her experience and conviction to empower others like her. Back in her studio, the colors danced upon the canvases, pulsating with renewed energy. Emily took a step back, observing the magnificence of her creations, art that echoed her own vulnerabilities and those of others. This was the embodiment of her journey, no longer merely about overcoming self-doubt but about transforming that journey into a beacon for others. With her vision emerging into focus, she felt ready to launch the first collective exhibition, a bold showcase of their shared stories. The process would not be without its challenges, but now, she stood solidly in her confidence, her resolve forged in authenticity. Through this metamorphosis, Emily accomplished something far beyond self-expression. She fostered a community bound by trust, encouraged by one another's journeys, and inspired to create an art world that celebrated and valued stories above all. And as she prepared for the exhibition, a sense of fulfillment washed over her, not just for her personal growth, but for the lives she would help illuminate. It was a beautiful dawn, and she was finally ready to emerge from the shadows. This was not merely the conclusion of her story, it was the beginning for a community that deserved to be seen and heard. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.